Okay, everybody, this is Dick Whitman here at the morning show, not the morning show, with our dear friend, Mr. Mike Robinson. Mike is an advocate for the usage of marijuana, as well as an advocate for people who cannot defend themselves. He travels across the country and gives advice, as well as is involved in a program called Racing for the Cure. Apparently, he has a variety of types of racers who are signed on to his program to support awareness and education regarding cannabis use and the ending of prohibition. Mike himself is a victim of marijuana prohibition and has come through his personal experience to discover what a positive thing it is in our society. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here out where we are. So, I wanted to ask you, where are you from? You're from Sacramento, right?
Yeah, I was born in Sacramento.
That's cool.
California native.
That's cool. That's awesome. Smack dab in the middle of NorCal.
That's right.
All right. And what's your experience? How did you grow up? What was your upbringing like?
Well, my upbringing was, everybody's got their story, and mine was pretty exciting. I was involved around racing a lot. My dad was a race car driver, and I sort of was destined to be that way myself, and I think that's how I ended up on the track.
All right. And so, what gets you started for racing for the Cure?
Well, somebody helped me quite a bit in my life. It means there's a lot of compassion programs going on in the world of cannabis.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are helping people, the real people.
Really?
Yeah, and somebody helped me and said, hey, I want to drive a race car.
Okay.
I want to be a race car driver. I had a point where I was saying I want to stay alive.
You'd already had an experience with driving race cars that wasn't...
Yeah, 1995 I smacked the wall pretty hard on a pro tour. I was in California, and we raced the western states, and I hit the wall real hard. The damage was intense. It literally took a couple of years to be able to walk, correctly, and ride again, and in and out of a wheelchair over the next half a decade. And the number of bones broken was just incredible. It just was one of those things that nobody ever wants to see happen on a racetrack.
It's like people that want to be a bull rider.
Yeah. Well, it's the size of the bull that matters. It's like I want to be a race car driver. Okay, we'll get you going, but let's race for a cure, not race for needing a cure.
I see. So you're really familiar with medical care and hospitals and all the things you've gone through. And so, do you think that had something to do with your awareness of how cannabis could be curative?
Well, yes. I mean, actually, it was a doctor that brought it to my attention that that my recreational use could be combined with one of my seizure medications.
Oh, really?
That's what really got me going. I mean, I had no idea. I got it on the internet and started looking, and I was like, wow, this medication rides in the system just like cannabis does, and it would work together.
Okay.
So that was like my first eye-opener, that cannabis had something to do with it, and that was 10 years ago. I mean, I was still seizing. It didn't stop seizure, just sort of helped it a little bit.
A fairly universal medication for epilepsy is phenobarbital, right?
Yes.
I know many people who have taken it. I have had friends who are epileptics who have committed suicide as a result of it, because apparently it's not that uplifting of an experience, is it?
Oh, no. Phenobarbital is not a fun medication. It's known as the end of the road. So for people that are medically resistant, like 30% of those that have epilepsy, they're not going to respond to any conventional medication. It doesn't matter. I failed 27 different anti-epileptic drugs.
Wow.
Okay, so phenobarbital was it. That was the only choice at the end of the road. And it just so happened that phenobarbital coupled with cannabis helped.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, some medications run in our body along with the fats that are in our blood, known as lipids.
Okay.
Phenobarbital attaches the lipids. So does cannabis. Then they embed themselves in the fatty tissues of our body and give us a blood count. They release. Sometimes people miss a dose of medication. Phenobarbital is one where you could actually miss a dose and be okay. I'm not at all advocating for missing doses of medication for people that need them. But phenobarbital, because you have a blood level that's so high and in a therapeutic range, if you miss a dose, you're still therapeutic. If you have cannabis running in your system with that medication, my experience was that blood level held for a long time as I lowered the dose.
So you could continue to avoid seizures by using cannabis to help you lower the phenobarbital that you were taking.
Exactly. And when I got into the cannabis oil 3 years ago, almost 45 days, it's going to be 3 years. And when I started using the oils and seizures stopped after 18 years of seizing all over the nightmare from every last place you could think of, airports, churches, you name it. I seized everywhere. I got back up, brushed it off when I could, or got up out of the hospital and walked out when I could. But when I look at all of that, I just burn off. What was your question?
Oh, I said that by using the cannabis, you can reduce your use of phenobarbital and lower the negative side effects of it, right?
Yes. I was actually able to lower the actual prescribed amount about a decade ago.
Yeah.
What I've had a very hard time doing with phenobarbital, and that only one medication, is getting completely off of it. I was on 8 different medications at the time that I started using cannabis oils, a total of 48 pills a day. Now, those 4 pills that still remain for epilepsy are phenobarbital in very small increments at 1/6 of the dose that I took.
Did you achieve at this dose? Did you arrive at this dosage with the assistance of your doctor as well?
At first, no. I arrived at this area. I had got off of 7 medications and onto that only one by actually fighting doctors and leaving my state to another state. I moved from California to Colorado after contacting a doctor and finding a doctor that would track the use of my oils and track the weaning of my medications and help me. I had doctors in California that just wanted to call Adult Protective Services and say a guy with severe epilepsy isn't taking his meds. I got cut off by my epileptologist. I got cut off by my neurologist. 30-day notices came in the mail. We can no longer treat you. You will need to find a new specialist.
And that's because of the cannabis oil?
That's right. I went to my primary physician and told him what was going on.
Yeah.
And he said, well, he saw it in my blood before, never said anything about it because I had a license for it, a recommendation. So I was responsible, so he didn't feel he needed to say anything about it. But what he told me was that he felt that it was the right thing to do. Unfortunately, he was 68 years old and getting ready to retire.
Okay.
Let me know that in the next 6 months he was going to be leaving his practice, and his partners didn't agree with what he agreed with.
Do you think that's because of the structure of the HMO and all that?
It's the structure of the HMO. It's a structure of prohibition. When you've got a government denying medicine that they're allowing other countries to produce. I mean, we've got pharmaceutical companies like GW Pharma in the UK producing a plethora of these synthetic cannabis medications based on the United States patent on medicinal marijuana.
Oh, really? There's a patent on it?
Yes, there is a patent on medicinal marijuana and has been for a decade, well over that, more like 2. So we're talking about a country that has something listed in Schedule 1 saying it has no medicinal value while selling off patents and allowing openly in the public and in the press, allowing a big company like GW Pharmaceuticals to create these different synthetics that do not work in our real endocannabinoid system. Our body has a system to work through.
Now, when you went to Colorado, was this during the time when the story came out about Charlotte, the epileptic girl?
Well, I'd gone a little bit after that. I was about 1 year into it. It was about mid-September 2014, so it was a little over a year after I'd started using CBD and cannabis oil, and I went through so many products in that first year, and I wanted to make sure that I was really in good shape, before I really started talking to people. And I started talking to people probably about 3 or 4 months after I started using it. And I went to Colorado because it was twofold. One, I wanted to show the world that, hey, you can leave it all behind. You can take a suitcase with you and leave it all behind, because what you're taking is your life. And if it's your child's life, you're taking your child's life with you and you're keeping it alive. So you're not leaving it all behind, rather you're taking it all with you.
I see.
And
Okay.
you don't need to go to the center of our country to do it. You can go to Maine. Yeah, I mean, I'm not just saying California only. You can go to Washington. California is a huge state with tons of open land. It's not this big metropolitan place that people think it is. So there's a lot of options for people. People don't need to just run off immediately. But at that point, I did. Because of the phenobarbital, because of the medicine weaning, and the lack of tracking. It's one of our biggest problems. You can't prove that somebody recovered using cannabis unless you have a physician actually testing blood to show cannabis in it and tracking the amount used. Now you have something where you can actually study it, because you're seeing that the patient is using this much oil, this much per day, for this item. Then you're seeing that medical problem slip away.
So, are you advocating expanding this this treatment program with other doctors in the United States? How many people do you know of provide this kind of service?
Well, nobody.
Well,
Yeah,
you found a doctor in Colorado
Yeah, I
who
found
might have been. Is this the same doctor that was the Charlotte's doctor? Or
no.
something?
This was a doctor that I had to call, talk to, that was very, very strict about prescription medications, illicit drugs, very strict. But after talking to me on the phone, decided that it was worthy to go ahead and do this, to actually track it. Because one thing, and I don't know that much about, the little Charlotte's personal story. All I know is that, hey, it helped the world. This whole world went into boom because they saw that happening. And, if everybody could just unify around that, it'd be awesome. But I don't know all about their story. But one thing I know is that little kids getting better, and that's the great thing. So we have to look at the positives and move forward. I can't say my story's wrapped around theirs or anybody else's is around anybody else's. I think that we all need to stand on our individual platform.
Now, in addition to being, a person who's benefited from the use of cannabis, and it's made a transformation in your life, hasn't it? It's completely
Yes.
transformed you've lost weight, you've gotten in better shape, you no longer have, well, you had what, tumors, all kinds of things.
Well, I was tracked at one time in a 3-day sleep study of having close to 70 seizures per night, and mostly nocturnal epilepsy. Just go off all night long, literally. During the daytime, it was more evident, people could see it. At nighttime, people aren't, especially living alone most of the time. Then cancer. I mean, at one time, there was 11 different lymph nodes that were really being looked at. 9 of them were well above and beyond an area where you'd cut open and take them out to biopsy. Before I even got to the point of getting to the surgical consult for that and to set up the surgery, I'd used 2 months of heavy cannabis oil again, and those were gone. I did the PET scan, and no longer did I have what they were looking at.
Can you show me where, just point to where some of the tumors were that you had?
Well, in 2003, this is the original cut from the first time.
Yeah.
They cut me open and left me a big old stack of scar tissue, so you don't really want that. Up in here, deep cervical, one that was way up here. There's one I can still feel. It'll swell up and go down. With cancer, that doesn't happen. So that's not cancer. That's the lymph node working right to clean my system out. But we're talking deep cervical. They threaten the carotid and the jugular. So easily you can metastasize to the brain, or it can come down lower. I had one lymph node that's right here, that subclavicle, that broke my collarbone.
It swelled up so much it broke the collarbone?
It swelled up so much within the bone, it broke itself out of the bone.
Oh my God.
And it actually left a lesion on the bone. But when we looked at it all, I consulted with with the mastermind behind keeping me alive. And it was like, well, that's sort of an open lesion in the bone. It's almost like a channel to allow calcium to flow. And that's one thing that cannabis oil does, is versus a pharmaceutical med that strips you of calcium and strips your body from bones that can really hold you up and keep you alive for your life. This cannabis oil feeds that and gives you the calcium, gives you what you need to stay alive. It's a superfood for a reason.
Okay, now in addition to this, you have epilepsy.
Mm-hmm.
You have, it's basically your cancer comes from an inherited disorder. Right?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to this, you're a race car driver, and you had injuries as a result of that. But then, after you, like, how many years after you got this scars healed or whatever it was, then you had another injury that was here.
No, that actually led me into the use of cannabis oil.
That's what I mean. You've been through it twice, and now third time's a charm for some reason. You had a serious health condition which you used it for. Tell me about what that was about.
Well, on September 8th of 2013, that morning, I had a nocturnal seizure. I used to always put a mattress down next to my bed. Mm-hmm. And, that mattress was set up with a sheet and a blanket and a pillow, because I'd seize in my bed and roll out of it every night. So I didn't.
Would you fall right back asleep again?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're out of it when you have a grand mal seizure. You don't know who you are. You don't even know you had it. The only reason I'd know was I was on the floor. So obviously there was enough activity to knock me out of the bed. I had enough times of hitting the floor and bruising my face or something, and I would need to appear or whatever, and I wouldn't want that. So I put that down as a natural reliever. Well, one morning apparently I fell off of that onto the ground and got up and went outside. I had torn an abdominal muscle.
Oh my God.
And I didn't know.
Oh my God.
That led to being unable to smoke the cannabis that I had a recommendation.
Because it would make you cough.
It would make me cough. I was unable to eat, so taking medications was hard. Everything was just a nightmare. I had a roommate from Korea that kept telling me I can't eat it all, and I can't eat it all, and I knew I couldn't eat it all, but he was trying to tell me cannabidiol. He went out and made me these little resin balls of this Chinese herb that was actually CBD. So while I was eating my raw cannabis because I couldn't smoke it, I was taking this can't eat it all stuff that was really frustrating me.
But you didn't know what it was.
No.
And he'd yell at you.
Yeah, because he yelled at me because I threw it away. Actually, at one point I was so tired of these little Chinese herbs, I know I can't eat it all. I don't need these. And he came out and he wrote it down. And, coming back to the little girl in Colorado, Charlotte, that's where I saw her for the first time. When he wrote down cannabidiol, I went to Google, where I do legal research. I represent kids in special ed, and that's what popped up was and I knew, the nation knew, this little girl has stopped seizing from this item, from cannabis.
This was because of Sanjay Gupta's report.
Yeah, I didn't even know who Sanjay Gupta was that day. I mean, it wasn't in that. It was like a UK Daily Mail article I saw or something. It was very non-descriptive, but it was enough to tell you, and it was circulating around enough. I was so busy in what I did, I didn't know about all that stuff. But the bottom line of it was, it didn't even take a week after that until I woke up one day and realized I didn't put the mattress down. I'd moved it out to the garage the day before to lift weights with, so in case I fell down, I'd fall down onto the mattress. Never brought it back, never needed it again. There has not been a grand mal seizure since that day, or since that time, other than related to withdrawal from pharmaceutical medications.
Really?
Twice withdrawing from phenobarbital. I have gone into severe status epilepticus, which required emergency intervention. One time it required a cordial thump, which breaks your bones in order to get your breathing and your heart beating again. So they have to intubate you, put you into ICU, and in a semi-comatose state to stop the seizures. That's happened twice from withdrawal. So now I know, yeah, we want to go nature, not pills. We want to do this and that, but we can't force people off every single medication. I mean, some people are on medications because they need it. I mean, think about people with diabetes. Well, we know now that cannabis can help that too. But we know that doing some things too fast can be harmful. Even trying to make ourselves 100% healthy too fast can be harmful.
I see.
So everything's got to be done carefully, especially weaning for medications. I couldn't stress that anymore. I mean, that's a place where people die. You don't have to have epilepsy to seize coming off of pharmaceutical medications. I mean, everybody talks about the horrors of being on this medication. I want off that medication. The thing that they need to realize is it's got to be planned and done systematically. I use certain formulas. I have this 550 program where I think in my head, well, every 5 days, if you take 5% off, in 50 days, you're going to have 100% of that medication gone. That's a simple wean. It's a simple formula. I don't like universal approaches. That would not work with everybody. But for some meds, like, your barbiturates, your medications for a lot of stuff, neurologically, include benzodiazepines. Very, very hard withdrawals.
I had a friend of mine that was addicted to Valium, and it was like, it's just the worst he had the worst time trying to kick it. And it's all because he was in pain, and he was depressed, and he had all kinds of issues. But the cure is worse than the disease at times.
Yes.
So, okay, so as a result of these experiences, you took it upon yourself to start looking at perhaps helping other people. Tell me about that.
Well, I've spent the last 2 decades plus representing kids in special education disputes.
Oh,
so
really?
It's very much tied to the world that already would need this and already was using this. And as I awakened to what cannabis oil could do for me, I saw how many others were already using it that I knew. And then I just had to step out there. One day, I think it was around February 2014, I made sure that, okay, these seizures have stopped. I'm not even having little ones. There's no shaking, twitching, jerking. Nothing's happening. Then I opened it up on Facebook, social media. I dived out there knowing that my friends' lists and groups and stuff would change. Knowing persecution's going to come. People that don't have the knowledge are going to be not happy. People are going to not want the guy that's using cannabis oil to represent their child in a hearing, or be on a teleconference in a meeting with a dozen administrators, what have you, and teachers. People have this preconceived notion that cannabis equals high, stoned, lazy, and that's changed. That was 2014. I can say now in 2016 that last year I was a tower official at a racetrack in Colorado that knew fully how I got back to the track and knew fully that I was not high in their tower and could officiate over a high-performance racing event with Porsches on the track. I'm talking a track where there's been fatalities. That's why it was closed. It got reopened last year. And I was very excited after 20 years to step back into racing in that capacity in the tower. Never did I imagine racing for a cure. I mean, this is exciting because, we're putting somebody on the track that has a dream and making it happen. And in doing so, also gathering every last driver we can from a local track to, I don't care if it's Corvette Racing Series you're in, or, a Sprint Cup driver. It doesn't matter what you are. Everybody needs to race for a cure. Everybody knows somebody's sick. It's not just cancer anymore. It's all kinds of things. So,
what are some of the conditions you think it's appropriate for?
It's easier to try to list some it's not appropriate for. I mean, there are so many conditions now that cannabis oil is being used. Our National Institute of Health, under PubMed online, has over 24,000 studies now. Our government has studied cannabis as medicine more than any other medicine there is.
Wow.
Well, why would they do that? Because they got a patent on it. Well, why would they put a patent on something that's prohibited? So they could tie it up while they have the UK test it and work on it through GW Pharma, who then runs trials on people in other countries. France for brain dead. Now they're going to try in Australia. I pray for those kids. You know,
Okay.
11 months before the CBD. Just
Yeah.
11 months sooner, I would give it to you.
Yeah.
11 months sooner. I have no problem talking about that anytime.
Teeth are tough. A lot of people.
Everybody knows about it because.
Well, that's unique because a lot of people are very self-conscious about their teeth.
I can see that. February 3rd at 10 o'clock at night, I told everybody that at midnight on New York time, I would finally let the overgrown goatee that I had that went down to here on the mustache be trimmed and show them the inside of my mouth.
Okay.
Which was broken to hell, and they didn't know.
Oh, I see.
Because they had all these closed mouth pictures, never a smile anywhere. So people saw me, it just busted out everywhere at it was just horrible. And they couldn't use the anesthetic to put me to sleep. So I had to agree to have 18 sockets cleared out with nothing other than shots.
Oh my God.
So I told the doctor, well, as long as I can bring my cell phone in and take pictures, and maybe you bring a mirror and I can see myself while you're doing it and take pictures with the other hand. And that guy looked at me like I was nuts. He was like, are you serious? You want 18 sockets in your mouth cleared out while you take pictures of it? It's going to be a bloody mess. I was like, I just want to remember the good part. The good part is getting those teeth in. And I'm telling you, there's a picture of me up on Facebook on February 4th of 2014 with the biggest smile on my face because I got my fake choppers after a year and a half of saving money. I mean, on Medicare, you don't have the money to spend. You're not flowing with cash. I mean, it takes forever to try to save a couple $100. So saving a couple thousand for teeth, it took a lot of different maneuvering.
A friend of mine who lives 2 blocks from Justin just got her new teeth in 2 weeks ago after going for like 2 years of waiting out the Medi-Cal debacle. And it was making her so crazy that her psychotherapist called up their doctor and said, will you accelerate the process?
It will make me go nuts.
Because it was...
You're judged everywhere. Treated like crap. You know what I had to tell my friends?
Oh,
I'm in the middle of a social experiment. I had to tell myself in my mind that I was doing a social experiment to see how people treated crackheads. Because I didn't know, and I punched a few in New York. I felt pretty bad about it. You know, to grab them at your seat and stuff, and you're walking in the snow, and it's like, you know, get off me. You know, so I felt really bad about that. And the way I was getting treated, I was like, well, I've treated people like this before in my life, and it was like, this is wrong. You know, the way I treat people is wrong, so this is coming back to me. It's karma. You know, and then I had to tell myself, okay, we're beyond karma now. It's just something that happened to you, so how are we going to get through it? And I just thought, okay, you're living in a social experiment everywhere you go.
Yeah.
I'd go into a 7-Eleven and get in line, and people would cut in front of me. Here I am, a person with you know, that pretty fat degree, you know, finished school early, you know, that, you know, I'm educated, you know, I'm not, you know, but you walk in and somebody's got broken out teeth and they're wearing a tank top. So we automatically think about people and make these snap judgments that are wrong.
Well, with the pace of everything, a lot of people feel like they're forced to be prejudiced or have prejudices about things. Now, when it comes to your advocacy for other people, you say you've done it for special people that were in special ed. What was that about?
Well, when I came home from the hospital after the wreck, the very first thing I noticed was my son, Michael II. Michael II. He went from vroom, vroom, daddy race car to in the corner making baby sounds. He was 2.5 years old. He stopped talking. I noticed all kinds of like Legos lined up in a row, and like Hershey's Kisses, like one kind of candy lined up in a row, and immediately it snapped me back to education. That was autism. There wasn't very much autism around back then. It was only like 1 to 2, and the next year it was changed to 2 to 5 per 10,000 kids. Now it's like 1 in 58. So I mean, the autism wasn't prevalent, but I saw that right away, and something had to be done. Within the next month, a program was created for them, and after that, I had to go to the school and fight for them. And at first, I thought, wow, what a great thing I got for my child. I went to this meeting at the school, and I came out with everything. And then I went to a parental group meeting that night, and they were like, they just really, screwed you over here, Mike. They give you the bare minimum for your kid. They robbed him. You need to go see this advocate that can help you and represent you. Okay, here I am, a former race car driver. I've got friends that are attorneys, So one of them I played Little League with. So I called up Russ, Sacramento, a good friend of mine. I'm like, what do I do? He's like, filing a lawsuit is simple. All you got to do is sue him. Well, how do I sue him? I mean, that's not simple. Well, it actually is. Anything can be done. We can achieve just about anything we set our minds to. So it all started with my own son. In order to gain him the proper education, I had to file what was then called a request for a fair hearing. That has now changed to a due process. Now we all know anytime somebody's arrested, they get due process, which is going through the entire court system. So now special education has been changed to this simple thing where I go in and talk to the superintendent and we work it out, and it's settled and done, to where attorneys are involved. I'm facing law firms. I'm a non-attorney rep, not an advocate. It's really changed. It's really stuffy. It's just not about the children anymore. It's about money.
So do you have to? So people recognize your skill, and or do you hear about cases, or how does this work?
Well, I have a history with restraint and seclusion. So
what's that?
It's a use of devices. Illegal devices or people to restrain and hold down children in special education against their will, or seclude them in sometimes these things called timeout cells, these little boxes that are disporable. Getting those dismantled and torn down, dating back to 1997, that's when I first ran into them. I was up in a school district where my son would have been. That was my first experience with a timeout cell and restraint and seclusion. So a lot of the stuff that I get is around that, but over the last couple of years, it's really weaned down to I need help keeping my child alive versus I need help keeping my child in school. It's more about the cannabis oil, how much do we use, this is happening, that's happening. It's very much changed. Like I was talking about when I sort of came out of the cannabis closet and had to be the person that was a professional, that, hey, although this is who I am, that's a representative in an actual court, in the administrative law court, I'm using cannabis oil, and that's what's allowing me to do it. It seems like a big conflict.
So what you're saying is cannabis oil may have a curative effect for people with autism.
Well, I think it could have a curative effect for people with everything. That's why when we have our racing for a cure, we're racing for all cures. I mean, when we look at cannabis oil and what it can do for autism, my own son doesn't use cannabis oil. I do. But there's groups on Facebook with 10,000 people in it for cannabis for autism.
Now, recently in Santa Rosa, they had a bust of an oil lab. Mm-hmm. And within, 48 hours, everything was returned, the people were released. Was this a result of just that county, or is the law universal in that? Are oil labs permissible, or refining facilities permissible? Or?
I can't go to a point outside of administrative law.
Yeah.
When I step outside of administrative law, I step into the unauthorized practice of law.
Okay.
So of course I have a legal opinion about all that, and that is.
Well, this sounds like they've taken it out of the criminal domain and put it into the administrative law domain by saying that permits have to be appropriately, the planning has to be done, building code has to be designed and things like that. But apparently, in the absence of those codes, cannabis refining would be legal because they don't have any restrictive ordinances for that. Is that right?
Well, I think that's 100% correct. I mean, we can refine oil in this state. This state, in Kern County, California, is one of the biggest producers of one of the best crude oils, not just in this nation, in the world. I mean, the Department of the Navy has owned that land and leased it out to Chevron. It's, I know people.
Bakersfield.
That's right. And outside of Bakersfield, all around there. Okay, they're refining oil for the use of cars getting around in boats traveling and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I believe that unjust laws should not exist. And I do believe that we have a few little tidbits in our Bill of Rights that tell us that it is literally our duty to disobey an unjust law.
Is there a law that restricts? Do you think cannabis oil is restricted in California, or the?
Well, that's one of those things where we fall into a gray area, and a comment could be misconstrued to this way or that way. I believe that cannabis oil is a must in the state of California. I believe that there's politicians in the state of California that are using it, that have wives and children using it, and not telling anybody because they can't. I mean, what is somebody going to do when they have their family member with cancer facing chemotherapy and radiation? They're watching them wither away, and they know there's a way out. There's no possible way. There's thousands of people in this state, running this state, and there's not one using cannabis oil. That equation doesn't work. So I don't buy that. Right now, I just believe that we have a government in general that's pushing unjust laws in order to allow the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry to really make a lot of money, and I have some personal experience with that.
A lot of people who might take advantage of cannabis oil, and personal friends of mine who have died as a result of cancer, shied away from it because they just didn't have the knowledge or resources. They didn't have the education. It wasn't prominent. It's always been in the shadows. It seems to me that Racing for a Cure is an organization that wants to bring it out into the light as much as anything.
Yes, we do. I mean, Racing for a Cure isn't something that's just about cannabis oil, because there's so many different things. There's cannabis oil. There's actually terpene oil that comes from cannabis. I put on my fingers and smell. That's all I do with it. It soaks into my fingers and gets into my bloodstream. I can put it along my wrist. It does not smell like cannabis. It smells sweet. I mean, cannabis has the same terpenes or smells that lemons do, that lavender does. I mean, we've got every last smell you can think of, over 200 in there. So it's a very diversified plant. And I think that if we concentrate just on one thing, just on cannabis oil, we get caught up on something, and I think it's a good distraction. All these regulations on cannabis oil, well, what are they doing while they're regulating and getting everybody stirred up about it?
Are there similar or, possible medical benefits from using the herb itself?
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got the acidic compounds in just eating the plant. I mean, my personal belief, and the herb's been used for thousands of years, obviously it's had to go into stews, soups, types of foods that were ate, medicinal compounds. We know that. All anybody has to do is hit Google Images and put cannabis pharmaceutical bottles, 1800s, and they'll see about 50,000 little bottles of stuff that had cannabis in it, with Park Davis, Eli Lilly, every big pharma company making billions a day right now made cannabis oil in the 1800s and the early 1900s, and that was medicine, and it was okay.
So what do you think is the problem? Why don't people want to make it more legal, or why does society want to reject it? What's that about?
Society's asking for it. Society's begging for it. What I'm seeing is society getting very upset and tired of leadership. I mean, Look back to the Boston Tea Party, okay? And I'm not talking about political parties here. I'm talking about what happened in history. People dumping out a bunch of tea, saying, look, you know, you're not going to tax us without properly representing us. You're not going to let our people die and collect taxes to keep them alive, because that's fraud. You're not going to have something Schedule 1 while selling off patents to a UK company, because that's fraud. That's the United States of America's leadership committing fraud upon its people at such a high level that it's killing little kids. So forget about the fact that they knew they could stop my seizures, and I seized for 18 years for no reason. Oh well, little kids have never had a chance to live are dying because our nation's leaders won't step up to the plate and admit the truth. Admit that prohibition was done for nothing but money, greed, and not for the people at all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mike Robinson. Good morning, everybody. What a great day.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
I think it's 4:20.
Is it now? Could be. It's close. It's nearby. Let's see if we got it all.